Hi, welcome everyone. I'm Stefan Tompson and I'm the host of this series of podcasts about the 3Cs initiative for the Institute of New Europe. And today I'm speaking with an expert from Estonia. I'd like to welcome Mr. Tiit Riisalo, the Ambassador at Large for Connectivity at the Estonian Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Tiit, maybe we could start with you telling us a little bit more about your work at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and a little bit about yourself.
Yes, thank you for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here. And now, briefly, my background is I'm a diplomat working for the Estonian Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Before my position here, which is the Ambassador at Large for Connectivity, I used to be the Chief of Staff for the President of Estonia, Kersti Kaljulaid. And as I know, 3Cs initiative was born from initially was more concentrated around the presidential institutions. So I know the initiative already from those days well. I was also one of the persons who was behind the Estonian presidency of the 3Cs initiative when it was a couple of years ago. And right now my position is as it is getting more and more sort of common in modern diplomacy that we don't just have ambassadors on concrete states or concrete international organizations, but in the globalized and connected worlds, there are issues that as we call them, are horizontal and connectivity, and especially as we know in current state of play in the world, trusted connectivity is something that is very important to us. So I deal with all connectivity issues in broader sense. So 3Cs definitely is still on my table, as I see one of the most important connectivity initiatives in the eastern part of the Europe, but also it has already implications in wider policy.
And connectivity obviously is such an interesting thing from an Estonian perspective, where Estonia is an absolute heavyweight when it comes to all things digital. I mean, the incredible branding of kind of e-Estonia, this idea of it being a digital hub, and the number of unicorns that Estonia has produced, despite being a fairly small country and with a fairly small population. So that actually makes your work, I assume, that much more important, right? And that much more exciting in a sense because of the amount of talent that you have regarding the obviously the ability to use the internet and new tech to generate companies, to grow to push your economic development forward, and to play a leading role perhaps in the connectivity aspect of the 3Cs initiative.
Yes, this you described it well, but what is sort of the trend in recent years, and it's again it connects also or is valid for the 3Cs initiative, is that and actually that the groundworks for our thinking on these issues were done during our presidency of 3Cs when the other member states, while we were preparing for our summit, asked that we have a pretty good understanding what do we have to do in the sort of traditional infrastructure sphere. This means our transport connections, our energy connections, but could you sort of conceptualize more on the digital side of it? And then I started to look into this. And actually prepared a white paper called "Smart Connectivity" for the 3Cs summit. But the main finding or the main point of that white paper was that digital in itself is not that important anymore, or it is still there, but of course, and e-governments and e-services are important. But we have to sort of understand that all the major infrastructure projects that we have right now ongoing, they have the digital layer. Is it communication, sort of the submarine cables? Is it our grids, energy grids? Is it our transport connections? Only the digital layer makes it really effective. And this is also, could be built up only if we share the standards, if we share the design from the very beginning. Only this case, this data which is created by this infrastructure is actually usable. We can build real services on this, either from the public sector or also from the private sector, which is very important element on this sort of concept. And so this enables us to sort of build really competitive infrastructure. And it's also a true green policy, because if we build it effectively, then there is already research out that even in these traditional sectors, like, let's say, moving cargo by the lorries from the Baltic Sea ports across the Europe, we can save 25-30% on energy costs if this is planned in a maximum effective way. But for this, we need data. We need that we can share the data. And from the other side, of course, it is not that easy to sort of. We see it is also possible also to physically damage our infrastructure, as we have these recent incidents in the Baltic Sea, for example, with certain gas pipes. But it is even much more easier to actually attack this infrastructure digital layer. So also we could not go without mentioning the security and cybersecurity side of this. And getting back to the Free Seas initiative, I think why this initiative is so important is that already, then a couple of years ago, we started to work together on these issues. And this is not something, either building the infrastructure or guaranteeing its safety, that we can do it alone. And as we are like-minded partners also in other political spheres, I think our cooperation is going well and is really meaningful. We see this, especially, after what happened in Ukraine, this all has been like a catalyst in this process.
You've anticipated several of my questions. Actually, we're giving a very concise answer to quite a lot of. There's a lot of elements to unpack there, but there is definitely from the things you were saying of expanding on the kind of brief description I gave of Estonia, of expanding on some of the technicalities of those. One of the things I looking from a Polish perspective, I find looking at the Baltics, I mean Estonia, but also Latvia and Lithuania. I know it's a bit of a myth, apparently, that I had this idea before I spoke to the experts from Latvia and Lithuania that the Baltic Three were incredibly close and sort of very, very sort of they cooperated very strongly. One of the very interesting elements that transpired from both the conversation with the Latvian and the Lithuanian was that also there's quite a lot of competition between the two of you. So there is a competitive element between these three sisters are actually sort of three rival siblings in a way, which is interesting to find out, just as a side note. But looking at the Baltics and looking at Estonia, especially Estonia, which has had this really incredible branding, it's such a signal to definitely to my generation in Poland that you can be a small player, a small country, a small population, that you can massively punch above your weight and actually kind of really achieve things that sort of seemed sort of impossible. I mean, not only were you behind the Iron Curtain like us in Poland, but also you were literally absorbed. You were a republic of the Soviet Union, and yet here this incredible transformation and this incredible success in 3 decades. It's such an interesting perspective to have Estonia be a pretty clear leader in that niche, or that sort of pillar of the Three Seas initiative. And that's kind of where I wanted to go next, is to ask you about the Three Seas initiative. From, you see it obviously from an expert's perspective, from an ambassador's position, from the position of a diplomat. So it's something you've been aware of for many years. What does the what is the atmosphere in sort of civil society around it? Is it something that's well known in Estonia? Is it something that the Estonians are enthusiastic about, or is it still the realm of diplomats, of geopolitical experts, of think tanks? What is the broad kind of knowledge about the three Cs in Estonia?
Yeah, I don't think, to be honest, that if you go to the street and ask that, do you know the Three Seas initiative? I don't, and you don't do it around the Estonian Parliament or Minister of Foreign Affairs or Minister of Economy, where just a state employee may be the one who you will randomly ask. But
Sure.
The honest answer is I don't think it is. It is a very well known brand.
Mm-hmm.
I think there is a lot of work to do in this sense. I think the meantime, the momentum we have right now is amazing. It came to us on a really sad circumstances,
Sure.
but tragic circumstances. But I think, and in this sense, I feel a little bit pride in our sort of way that when we took a closer sort of position or a more intense position towards the Free Seas initiative and put our energy there. There was sort of the hint that it is more oriented to or thought to be like an economic cooperation project. But any kind of economic cooperation leads to also cooperation in the other fields and layers of society. And now I think it was a smart move from our side to join in, and not only from our own strategic perspective, but I think we sort of gave a little bit new energy to the whole movement. And now we see why it is important, because already then it was not only the economic perspective that we had in mind, but I thought that our current history, past 30 years, we have mainly concentrated our closest neighbors. As a small country, we don't have the energy to do everything, And so it's, of course, our Scandinavian partners, which are biggest markets and so on, our closest neighbors to the south, Latvia, Lithuania, of course. But then somewhere there, of course, we had diplomatic relationships, but not too much more. And then we thought that it's the right time to take a deeper look to these relations also, because one moment they could be needed because we still share a common history and a common understanding on some issues that might influence our very physical security. And now we see that unfortunately it all materialized. But coming back now, the popularity of Free Seas and Eastern Europe, I think, step by step, with the small steps that we already did with the Free Seas, but now with our practical, cooperation in everything concerning Ukraine, I think the general population in Estonia understands that our true friends, to whom you can, rely on the hardest possible moments, they are in the East, and or the so-called East European belt, and or
the East may be misunderstood here. Sure, in Central and Eastern Europe.
Yes, so which without Ukraine anyway will not be complete, and now we have this historic moment to win the war together, to help Ukrainians in any way, and then with this momentum rebuild Ukraine better back, and we will all win from this big time.
Just a slight digression about something you said about economic cooperation leading to change in other fields. It's interesting because actually some of the problems that we're facing today with the Russian invasion of Ukraine, some of it is actually rooted, in my opinion, but also in the opinion of quite a few experts, and even of some Germans as of late, is that actually the Ostpolitik that was started about 5 decades ago, and this theory of Wandel durch Handel, of change through trade. So the idea of the Germans was, if we start trading with these guys, if we start buying their oil and supplying them with pipelines and supplying them with the technical know-how of how to build them, that essentially that Russia would become reliant on them and thus would be forced into change, and it wouldn't actually be beneficial for them to wage war. And this was done, interestingly, I mean, obviously, I'm sure you know about this, but this was done during communist times. And the Germans had a dual strategy in this, in the sense of their country was split in half. So I guess from that perspective, fair enough of wanting to bring back that rapprochement between the two. But the lesson is, nonetheless, not everyone changes through trade or economic cooperation. So I guess a little word of caution in the digression. But going back to what you said, much of what you said about the tragic circumstances in which Ukraine has found itself in, and obviously us as NATO flank countries have found ourselves in. I mean, there is, despite the tragedy that has occurred and the human lives that are being lost and the destruction and the cultural damage that is being imposed on Ukraine, there has been an incredible momentum, as you've put it, in the sense of suddenly our countries, I think for the first time perhaps in the first time ever, there's been a sense that the Baltics and Poland and Czechia, Slovakia, Romania, and a few other countries in the region have really actually been a leader in the sense of the response, the humanitarian aid, the military aid, obviously given in scale to our GDP. I mean, obviously we can't compete in donations with a country like the United States of America, but as a percentage of budget, like the amount that was given by the Baltic Three, especially by Estonia, is absolutely astounding. And there is a sense, I agree with your diagnosis of this momentum, that on this tragedy, there is now truly a historic opportunity for our region, and then to bring in Ukraine and eventually, hopefully, a free Belarus into the fold, into back to this community of Central and Eastern European countries. And it's an extraordinary feeling. I think almost, I mean, from a perspective of a fairly relatively young still person, I can really, that energy is quite palpable, and you walk around Warsaw and you get that sense of there is an energy and a hope and a sense of optimism despite what's happening. And what's interesting, I think, with many of the Ukrainians that I've met or that I've interacted with, and I'd be curious to know if it's the same with you, you know, despite the fact that they are essentially refugees, that they're in exile, or that they found shelter in Poland and other places, there is really a sense of optimism about them, that victory is possible, that victory not only is possible but actually likely, and really a sense of that tragedy has, if anything, pushed Ukraine much, much, much closer to us, and Russia, in a sense, that much further away. Well, we still need to defeat them militarily, of course. So going back to the three C's, in terms of from an Estonian perspective, what are the main things that you look at an expert level that are of interest? What are the key opportunities that you see in the initiative for your country and for your people?
Yes, no. As I understand, part of the point of this podcast is to look what is the economic perspective.
Sure.
So to be, I think it is in some ways instrumental to Estonia to be linked into this north-south corridor, and no, the thing is that but we have been just speaking that now I think we start to believe that it is actually doable, because and it's actually has meaning, and it's not just you can dream about things, but then you understand that it's a dream, that if we don't dream, you don't have the reality, but maybe the reality looms somewhere like over 20 or 30 or 50 years. But now what all that has, that has taken, has happened during the past year mainly. I think we have found this self-belief that we can do something, we can influence the politics of the big European Union, and people are listening to us and doing what we are saying, because that is true what we say. And if we want to build this union a rule-based, equal, democratic union, then the bigger ones also have to listen what the smaller ones say, if what they say is true. And arising from this, I think we also now start to believe more in ourselves, that we can do politics, and this is one side that influences the whole world. But we can also, why not build, because there is, if you look at the initial idea of the three Seas, sort of to make the eastern part of Europe also prosperous like is the western part. So if you look at the objective sort of figures, there is not a single objective figure in our macroeconomic capacities or in our IQs that Estonia, Latvia, or Poland or Romania wouldn't be as prosperous as the rest of the Europe. And maybe thing that interest or takeaway from the current situation is that to actually start to believe that it's possible, and also economically after this, or to realize this project in a real world, including Ukraine. And then, yeah, of course, economically, not only security-wise, but it's important in Estonia to be part of this then 140 million growing market that will become one of the most vibrant parts in the world. So it's a complete win-win situation for all of us.
And what would you say are the main challenges that you see to actually making it a reality? Because obviously we're at a phase where there is belief, there is a dream that has been outlined, defined. There are projects that have been described, some have even been started. And now there's this momentum that we've described and talked about, and a real sense of purpose, which I think is a very important driving factor. But there are, of course, challenges lying ahead. What would you say are the biggest challenges in making this happen?
I truly don't see sort of if you talk again about Ukraine, so I've been dealing with Ukraine already years, and we always knew that Ukraine has huge potential, but there is a lot of corruption, and this kills a lot of the development possibilities. So I wouldn't see such a sort of use it as an example, one big sort of obstacle that is hindering our cooperation in the broader context in the three Seas. But I think we mainly just need to work, and with the work we build the trust. I think that always the trust is an important issue. And this comes through practice, and we have had this two really difficult sort of periods. The first was a COVID, and now the war, and we are still standing strong. And I think this also teaches us the importance of trust, and hopefully during the next year, we already have more or less solve the health crisis. We keep our fingers crossed that there will be a civilized solution for this conflict also, and then just we have to work with this our new energy and new connections and new trust between the partners, and it's doable.
And the challenges of making the vision of the three Seas as one of the issues that strikes me, and that a few other of the people I spoke with have also identified, was the issue of money. And there is a 3Cs Three Cs Initiative investment fund that has been set up. There have been some pledges, including a pledge of $1 billion from the Americans. But regardless of, there still lacks, we don't actually have the amount of money that's required in the fund to bring about the projects that have been described. How can we find this money? And what are the ideas?
Yeah, it's there is no easy solution. But what concerns the 3Cs investment fund, which I also know pretty well, so I think we maybe in general public, the expectations are a little bit too high for these institutions, and maybe the name is a little bit confusing, because it sort of implies that it solves all the problems in the 3Cs area. This is not never been the idea or even possible, because the investment gap we have is really huge. It goes to hundreds of billions of euros, even up to trillion, people say. And the fund's sort of capacity is imagined to be in around maybe 3 billion euros. So, but why 3C's investment fund is important, for example, for Estonia, or why Estonia joined it, it is for us, it is a case study that we put private, we put public investment there. So we put our skin in the game. Then we try to fundraise private money, and also with a sort of private sector involvement, see if we can make some of the cross-border infrastructure projects bankable in a way that they're true investments and earn this private and taxpayers' money back in the end. And for us, we have looked at this always as an experiment. If this is successful, or like a case study, then the eyes start to turn, and it's sort of, for me, it's like a joint marketing campaign of the 3Cs area for the private capital, and the problem is that we started it quickly and made the first investments also really quickly. But then, the COVID and now the war hit in. And of course, in this context, and taking out the general sort of unsure situation in the global context, of course, it is not so easy to attract, bigger investors. We're thinking in the context of big pension funds and so on, institutional investors. But the model is still there, and I think we'll see how it really works after we have managed to sort of settle these problems we have right now. And again, coming back to this positive side of this momentum we have, so I think then it will be a true sort of a moment for the rest of the world to look at us, to this part of the world, and the reconstruction of Ukraine is going to happen anyway. It is smart to do in a according to a real master plan, sort of not keeping in mind only Ukraine. And I think it's going in this way, that we build the infrastructure really so that we will be connected between ourselves and then to the West and rest of the world. And I think there is enough potential to attract investments in big scale. So that we haven't reached to all the sort of visions we had a couple of years ago. There is nothing to do, but it's not in the sense the fault of doing something wrong or not being capable of doing it. It's the real life circumstances. we have adapted, and I think this also shows that we are ready for a new growth.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for your perspective. I really like the optimism, the hopefulness of it. I'm on board. I agree with the idea of the momentum. I think it's an incredible time for our region. And I'm really so full of hope. And actually, after this conversation, I'm, if anything, even more hopeful than I was. So, Mr. Tiit Riisalo, the Ambassador at Large for Connectivity with the Estonian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, thank you so much again for your time, and all the best.
Yeah, thank you. And together we will win. We will prevail. We don't have the other option on the table.
Indeed. Thank you.
Thank you.